Welcome back to SaharaTV. My name is Rudolf Okonkwo. We are continuing our discussion on the National Conference, which is going to start in Nigeria on Monday. We have two distinguished guests that will join us in this discussion. From Nigeria, we have Bamidele Aturu, who is a civil rights attorney. Bamidele, welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much.
And from Spain, we have Chido Onumah. Chido is the director of the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. Chido, welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much, Rudolf.
Okay, let me tell the viewers that there is a slight delay when Bamidele is talking to us from Lagos, so bear that in mind. Now, before we go to the National Conference proper, let's talk about the incident today in Abuja where about 7 to 10 people, we are not sure of the exact figure, died. These people, applicants who are looking for job, immigration job in Abuja. Let me ask you, Bamidele, you're in Nigeria and you're an attorney. How do you see this incident? I mean, people are saying this is not the first time something like this happened. Why? What is the answer? What is going on?
Well, I think the incident really shows again very clearly that our governments at all levels are now acting more as an instrument of untimely death to young Nigerians. Because when you look at what happened in Abuja, the only way we can describe it is that this was a tragedy that was inflicted on our people by the very government that has a duty under the Constitution to protect lives and property. It was very shameful, very sad, tragic, and I think that this must be a wake-up call to all Nigerians that we will have to take our destiny in our hands, literally.
Chido, you are in Spain and you are reading this. What does that say to you about the state of things in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Rudolf. When I read the story, I think I read the story on Sahara this morning.
Sorry, Chido, go ahead. I know there's interference, there's a delay, and also maybe someone had their live stream on, so that's why there is, you can see a head echo. So maybe turn it down a little bit.
Sorry, Chido, go ahead. I know there's
Okay, so someone has a live stream on. Please, can you turn it off, please? So that it won't interfere with what we're discussing. Okay, go ahead, Chido.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. As I said, I read the story this morning on Sahara, and it was really gut-wrenching for me. It's tragic, as Aturu said, but it's also, to a great extent, shows a reflection of the failing state called Nigeria. Just as some of your viewers mentioned in earlier program, this is not the first time. And I've had to reflect incidents like this in my earlier book. I remember talking to the chairman of one of the agencies, national agencies in Nigeria, and he was telling me the kind of problem he had to go through the process of recruitment. I think they wanted about 500 people or so in one particular year, and was it 60,000 people had applied for this job. Interestingly, he was receiving entries, applications from senators, from the Senate president, from emirs around the country. So even for these young Nigerians who went out today to do this interview, there is no guarantee that any one of them would get this job, because you can be sure that this is just done to fulfill all righteousness, as we say in Nigeria. All these available spaces must have been filled. It's either those who are within the immigration must have collected money up front from people who can afford it to fill this space, or those in power, either senators, members of House of Representatives, and so on, governors and so on, have filled these slots. So it really boils down to trying to fix the country, because, I mean, we could continue to tackle some of these sectorial problems, whether it's corruption, whether it's unemployment. They will continue to happen as long as we do not address the bigger problem, which is Nigeria itself, the way it's structured and the many problems that go with it.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get into that because that's what the National Conference was supposed to do, hopefully. But Bamidele, let me ask you, you're an attorney. In the past, has anybody been held accountable for situations like this? You know, like people who should plan for this and make sure there are no tragedies like this. Has there been any kind of lawsuits and people being held accountable for something like this?
Well, I must be honest with you, Rudolf, not one that I know of. I think that this is unfortunate. People are getting used to having, people's lives wasted as a matter of routine. I am sure maybe in government circles, they cannot be bothered by this kind of tragedy. As far as they're concerned, maybe it's just -7 for them in terms of the headaches that they ordinarily ought to have. In the sense that every day you wake up in Nigeria, you open your newspapers, you tune on your radios or television sets, you you are hit by horrendous news of Boko Haram killing hundreds of people. So as far as they're concerned, what is 7 or 8 people compared to the hundreds and scores of lives that are wasted every day by the Boko Haram insurgency, and also by hundreds of lives that are lost on our roads that are not motorable, by hundreds of people who die needlessly and recklessly, in our consulting clinics, not hospitals. So for us, our leaders are quite guilty of, if you like, encouraging sudden death, whether by acts of commission or omission. And I think that the question you have asked is quite pertinent. Until Nigerians begin to think about, ensuring that somebody is held accountable for this unnecessary waste of, human lives, particularly people who are caught in their bloom, as it were, there will be no end to this sort of horrendous deaths that we have all over the place. So I think that people must begin to think about how to get government people accountable, because you don't just, invite, young graduates, unemployed people to these centers without putting in place, measures, putting in place, security checks that will prevent this kind of incident from taking place. And so if somebody did that without taking adequate precaution, that person ought, in my view, to be responsible in law for this needless death.
Now, finally, Chido, let me ask you about this incident. What could people do, the government, the unemployed, people looking for jobs, to make sure that they won't be victims of this? I know that two of you, you were student union leaders in your days, and since this has been going on for a while, why are people not saying no to situations like this? I know they are desperate to get a job, but what can the civil society do to make sure that, because we're waiting for the government to do something and they're not, and it continues to happen, what can we do, ordinary people, civil society, do to make sure that we bring an end to these tragic situations?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really out of frustration and desperation. People just feel that this is an opportunity for them to, try and go out there and see if they can get something for themselves to survive in a country where government doesn't really care about the people. I mean, just to buttress the point Aturu raised, this is really no different. It's not as if you take care of this, what about the incidents of Boko Haram and armed robbery? People, this is just one more incident where the leaders of Nigeria are so carefree about the lives of Nigerians. So it's not something you can tackle on its own. I mean, of course, civil society can do a lot. People can, we can look at the legal angle of it, maybe see what options are available to us in filing a lawsuit, for example. And I'm sure the likes of Aturu will be interested in, on a pro bono basis, taking up some of these things. But there is also the need for greater awareness. I don't know how much people can do, because when you find yourself in the kind of situation these young men and women find themselves, I don't know how much of talking you can do to dissuade people from going ahead. People just have to do what they have to do in order to find a means to survive in the country. So, great, civil society can create some awareness, can talk about the need, or even pressure some of these agencies and talk to their management and say, don't organize this thing this way. Maybe there's something online, but it's so difficult to pin down one particular thing that you can do because at the end of the day, even if they don't go to this center, it could be some other thing, some other platforms, and something like this could as well happen. So I just don't want to get into this argument about tackling some of these issues, bit by bit. I feel more comfortable focused on the bigger picture.
Now, but whether it's the Boko Haram attack on military barracks that led to over 200 people dying, or this incident in Abuja, on Monday there will be a national conference. It's going to kick off. And a lot of people are hopeful. A lot of people don't believe in that. Bamidele, let me come to you. I know that your position is that it will be a waste of time. We actually have, we're spending $7 billion for that conference. Why do you think people are hopeful? Are they just going there to play, or why? Why are people who are participating hopeful that they will achieve something?
Well, I think that it's important for us to do a thorough analysis of the categories of people who are attending the conference, so we don't do a reductive, analysis. In the first place, I want to make it very clear that we don't have a homogeneous category, if you like, in the sense that we have people who are going there who genuinely think that with this conference they can push the frontiers of freedoms in Nigeria by also insisting that government does what is right. I mean, there are people like that, and there are people who think that, look, if we avoid this conference, people are going to take decisions there anyway, and then whatever decisions they take might eventually be binding on Nigerians. So why don't we engage the process and then see what can be done? And I also know that there are also people who are going there and say, look, we would, and that's my position. For those who have the time, they can go there, engage the process, and say, look, ladies and gentlemen, we can show that these people are not sincere. They've called us for a conference, and it is clear that the ruling elites have run out of ideas, and that the only way is to begin to talk about regime change, system change, as it were. Then, of course, we have people who are going there because they just see this as an opportunity to have their own slice of national cake. And there are people who are going there also because they are jobless and they have no work to do. And so if people are going to do a conference and they're going to be heavily rewarded, quote unquote, with per diem, so why don't we just move to Abuja for the 3 months, and rather than stay at home and do nothing and then just die of starvation? And then, of course, there are people who are going there because they have their own political agenda. They're going there and they want to say, look, this is how we can continue to be relevant. So they want to go there, negotiate among the ruling blocs in different geopolitical divisions in Nigeria. This is what they do best. Treat among themselves, get positions, get oil blocks, get all sorts of juicy contracts, and then, of course, it's business as usual. So we have all sorts of people who are going there. Some are also naive. Some are also naive because they think that, well, this conference is going to solve problems. But of course, we must also begin to ask ourselves, what does the government itself think? By organizing a conference that the outcome will not be subjected to a referendum, by organizing a conference whose agenda has been predetermined. I think we must be very careful before we begin to throw away people's resources organizing this sort of jamboree.
Chido, there were reports that you were going. Now you said you are not going. Why are you not going?
Well, I was not going because I was not invited, simply.
Okay. But a lot of people in the civil society are going, and there are this report that they've been paid to go there. They've been mobilized. That's the word that is used to go there and the mobilization was coming from the Niger Delta. Why are people in the civic society going and to attend the conference where they are going to be paid? And what is you are in that world? What are you hearing? What is their motivation?
Well, from my section of civil society, which is the pro-democracy civil society section, there's really no motivation beyond the fact that we want to see a comprehensive overhaul of the Nigerian states based on the rights and a system that we see Nigerians, the downtrodden, being taken care of, being in power, so to say. I don't know how much in terms of motivation that is involved here. I don't even know how much people are being paid. My expectation is that it's perhaps normal if you bring in people here, maybe you pay allowances. There have been figures ranging from 2 to 4 million to 8 million. I really don't know, but I mean, well before some of us, and I'm sure Aturu will agree with me, have been in this process of calling for a national conference or sovereign national conference in the last 2 decades or so, and we've not stopped doing that. That was the topic of my 2 books. And once the government made it clear that they wanted to organize the conference, the section of civil society that I belong to got together, and over time we've issued statements, we've issued our position, we've made our position clear on this. So as Aturu said, there are many people who are coming to this conference with different agenda, those who want to be politically relevant, those who are coming perhaps for the money, those who are coming because they hope to remain relevant after this. I think it's an opportunity for us to just go sit down together and hear people out. They are all Nigerians. We have the good, the bad, and the ugly. At the end of the day, we all have a stake in this country. This country belongs to us. So let's go and find out what people are thinking, what ideas people have about the future of this country. And it's important that we do it in a very peaceful way, because it's most likely that the option of doing it in a full-blown civil war situation stares us in the face.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bamidele, let me ask you, I know you are not going, but what will you be looking now for in terms of the discussion going on there? What will be the best case scenario that or you are looking for when you watch the proceedings?
Well, I think that what I would still advise the critical segment of the civil society that will be attending the conference to do is to do a lot of agenda setting. They need to focus on agenda setting. The first thing I think they must do to show some level of independence is to insist that there will be no go area in terms of the scope of discussion. I think this is very crucial. This is very important. Now, once they do that, then maybe skeptics like me may begin to have a rethink, because as I have said several times, I would really want to be proven wrong about my pessimism concerning this conference. So that is the first thing I think they should be doing. Number 2, apart from that, they should also insist that when we talk about restructuring Nigeria, we're not just talking in terms of the geopolitical permutations that some of these ethnic warlords always have in mind when we talk about restructuring. Restructuring Nigeria goes well beyond the idea of parceling Nigeria among some of these ethnic barons, who pretend to be politicians all over the place. I will imagine that we need to talk about how to make Nigeria more equitable in terms of even doing a restructuring of our reward system, because a situation where governors are still, debating whether it is just or not to pay 18,000 naira minimum wage, and while some people are earning several millions of naira per month, I think it's inequitable, I think it's unjust, and I think that encourages a lot of impunity. Because, you see, when you can't pay people 18,000 naira per month, and then people are helping themselves to our national treasury at will, or earning fabulous salaries, if you like, some will call it a Mungo salary, then they will not respect the ordinary person on the street. Now, if PHCN is not working, in other words, if electricity is not being generated, they don't bother because they can easily buy generators, they can generate light for themselves, and they don't bother whether the roads are fine, whether they are pothole reading, because, I mean, these guys can buy helicopters. Nigeria now, I think, is beginning to have the largest, club of private people with jets. So they don't bother. So, and then they send their children abroad, because the schools here are not good. So now, when you make it clear that the least paid Nigerian should earn 50,000 naira and the highest paid Nigerian should not earn more than 250,000 naira, and then you also abolish the iniquitous system where oil blocks or all licenses are given to individuals, then I think everybody will begin to think straight, will begin to treat people like human beings, and then nobody will think that he's a special human being. Because when you take yourself to be a special human being, unknown to you, you are actually dehumanizing yourself. It's because there are no categories of human beings. And so I think that our people should go to the National Conference, set this sort of agenda, and also insist on decency in governance and in government. Because what you have today where people travel because you are a governor, you think you own Nigeria, you own the roads, you go with a convoy of cars, you drag people from the road. I mean, I think this sort of behaviors, must be legislated out of existence, if you like. So we need to begin to let people know that because they are serving as public officials, does not make them special categories of Nigerians. And if they can do that, and if they can make this enforceable, well, I will then go and announce publicly that, well, my pessimism was unjustified, and in fact, I will apologize to those who put this together. But then, as I said earlier on, I know that the critical segment of the civil society will want to go to this conference and then use it as a basis of further heightening the contradictions among the ruling elites, and I think that will be fantastic also.
Now, Chido, are you not concerned that there are no clear instruments for putting into effect whatever decisions are arrived at this national conference?
Well, I'm concerned about that, but I really want to say, and this is also the position of the section I belong to within civil society, that when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. I think, save for a revolutionary transformation of Nigeria, which is what is urgently needed, this is perhaps, the minimum we can get as a working tool. I know some people have opposed a conference like this, and believe me, there are enough reasons to be pessimistic, whether you want to talk about the caliber of people that are being brought back to be part of this conference and so on. But beyond that, we also should ask ourselves, what is the alternative? I mean, we just sit down and fold our arms, our country is sliding into a civil war. We sit down and fold our arms and hope that by 2015, things would get better. Of course, the things are not going to get better. So the challenge is, what do we do? How do we use this? The government, of course, didn't call this conference because it's really perhaps has always wanted to call a conference. I think just as one of your speakers, Jaye Gaskia, mentioned in an earlier program, the government has found it's becoming increasingly weaker, both within its party and nationally. And it just felt perhaps that this is an opportunity. This is something that they needed to do to show up support. Fine, that's the government agenda. What about those of us who have been concerned about this process? What do we do? And if you look at it, there are many fundamental problems in the country. And my own, and I mentioned this in the last piece I did for Sahara, which appeared yesterday, I think those of us from civil society who are pushing this, and let me just state quickly here that this national conference is not a silver bullet, and we shouldn't see it as such. Our country is in a deep crisis. Nigeria is on the brink. This is just an opportunity. I don't think we'll go to this conference hoping that we can resolve all the problems of Nigeria. Perhaps if it's one issue that we are able to even agree on, which can become the basis for building for the future, that will be magnificent. And what is that problem? And the problem is that of nationhood. So in going to this conference, the fundamental issue that we'll be looking at is the structure of the Nigerian state. And by structure, just as Aturu said, I do not look at Nigeria as a collection of ethnic nationalities. Nigeria is no longer the sum total of its ethnic nationalities. So what you have in place of ethnic nationalities now are what I would like to refer to as civic nationalities. So you go there, I mean, those who want to come with their ethnic and religious baggage, of course, they are part of Nigeria, they are Nigerians, they are welcome to come to this conference. But when we go to a conference like this, the fundamental issue that we ought to be looking at is the structure of Nigeria in sense of what would be the federating unit. Do we want to have the 36-state structure as it is now, or do we want to have the 6 geopolitical zones, but not based on any ethnic or religious thing, so that we can stop, for example, having this idea. People still talk about the North as if it's a separate country from the rest of Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Bamidele, let me ask you about the judiciary. I know if you are going to suggest, how do we strengthen and make the judiciary independent of the other arms of government?
Well, you see, the truth of the matter is that it's a very desirable thing to make sure that the judiciary is truly independent of the other departments of government, if you like. But the truth of the matter is that you cannot have an independent judiciary that is not self-accounting. You cannot have an independent judiciary if the heads of the judiciaries, will have to go and be, begging for resources to run their institution. So I think financial autonomy is key if we want to really have independent judiciary. And there's no running away from that. That's very important. But apart from that, we must also ensure that we appoint only credible people, as judicial officers, and that whenever we find any judicial officer, engaging in corrupt, practices, such a person should not only be shown the way out of the judiciary, but must be tried and sentenced where necessary. Because if you just say, oh, this person has been removed, and then the person goes to enjoy his or her loot, wherever, I don't think that will be sending the right signal. But also, in also dealing with these judicial officers, we must ensure that they have been given fair hearing, they've not been thrown out needlessly without cause. Because some of the cases that NJC dealt with recently may, give us some cause for concern. Because if you are dealing with a judicial officer, because the judicial officer is lazy, I can understand that. If you are throwing them away because they are indolent or because they are corrupt, but I will not be a supporter of any move that would, calumniate, if you like, or unnecessarily, throw out these judicial officers because they genuinely make errors of law. Because that is why you have the appellate, benches, if you like. So if you now say somebody has given an erroneous opinion or an erroneous judgment, I don't think that is a basis for asking such a judge to be shown the way out. So for me, I think it's important to know that once we get these judicial officers who are corrupt and we have evidence against them, we should not only throw them out, but we should ensure that we try them and they are sentenced appropriately. That is the way I think we need to go.
Now, let me ask you, Bamidele, before you go, what do you think about the chairman of this national conference? Is he a credible person? Do you think he's going to be fair? Do you think that he's the right person for this job?
Well, look, let me tell you the truth. The Jonathan presidency could not have got a better chairperson, in my view, at this time, among retired judicial officers. Justice Kutigi has a very well-known reputation among Nigerian lawyers and those who know a lot about the judiciary. Somebody who's incorruptible, somebody who's fair, and somebody who's honest. In fact, if you are privileged to have read some of his judgments, even as presiding officer, at the Supreme Court, he dissented. That showed some courage. So I think from what I know about him, he's independent-minded. He's not the kind of person that can be used anyhow. But you see, this goes beyond his own qualities as an individual. You're talking about a conference of 492 people, a conference that politicians are going to do all sorts of things to ensure that their own will becomes supreme, and all sorts of politicking may go on. In fact, I would not be surprised if Justice Kutigi even resigns by the time the funny things begin to play out in that conference. But I tell you about his quality, about his character, I can tell you, very sterling human being.
Okay, Chido, we're running out of time. Let me ask you how you will rate, what will you rate as success or failure of this conference, and what if at the end of this conference, when people down the road, 5 years down the road, people start saying, "Oh, we need another conference," won't people in government say, "Oh, you had your conference, you had your chance, and you shouldn't be talking about another conference"?
Well, until we get it right, I guess we have to, Rudolf, really, I mean, in all seriousness, we have to keep having conferences until we think we've arrived. What is the alternative? That's the question. The country is in dire straits. We'll keep having this conference, but let me quickly make the points I was trying to make before you went to Aturu. For me, really, what would amount to a success at this conference is that we put 3 basic issues on the front burner, and these issues can become the basis for further agitation, and maybe another conference, and who knows, another conference. I talked about the structure of the country, what would amount to the federating unit. The states would have to have powers to create the number of local governments they have, not something that shouldn't be done by the federal government. Resource control, which is really perhaps the bane of Nigeria. It's all stupid. It's all about oil. Then of course there's citizenship right. Because for example, if somebody is claiming that the oil in the Niger Delta, for example, belongs to the North, if somebody in the North can come to the Niger Delta and live as a citizen, why would he be bothered who owns the oil really? If someone from Kaduna can come to Bayelsa State and claim Bayelsa State and live there, pay his taxes, run for governor of Bayelsa State, why would he be interested in who owns the oil? So for me, it's as I said, this conference, we shouldn't look at it as the be-all and end-all of the Nigerian problem. Perhaps what we may take from this conference is to sharpen the contradiction in the country. And let us know where everybody stands. Let us know what the basic issues are. Maybe we'll need another conference to now agree on how to resolve this.
All right, Bamidele, final thoughts.
Well, I know one thing about Nigerians. We are very resilient people. And I know that whether the government of the day likes it or not, whether the regular politicians like it or not, our people will triumph over all the enemies of justice in this country. I'm very sure of that. That is the lesson that history teaches us.
All right, Bamidele Aturu, thank you so much for joining us.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you for the good work you are doing.
Thank you. Chido Onumah, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you, Rudolf, and I look forward to Dr. Damages.
Thank you. All right, that has been our continuing discussion on the National Conference. Of course, next week we will bring you more of the delegates, and we'll continue to talk about it and let you know what they are discussing at the conference. We are going to now pause, and we'll be back with Keeping It Real, Dr. Damages, The Break, and all the other shows. Stay tuned.